So the question today is why is the front wheel on a disc brake bike spoked differently to a front wheel on a rim brake bike? What is it with the spoking and why it has to be different? And as you can see here, I've got a rim front wheel and I've also got a rim back wheel. But when you look at a disc brake bike, the spoking with the G3 design, as you can see here, is the same as the back and same as the front. So the spoking is cross-spoked with a leading and trailing cross-spoking on the back wheel and the front wheel. So let's roll the intro and let's have a bit of a talk about why these are different. Well, the reason is that when you have a disc brake bike, the braking is done at the hub instead of the rim. And the braking force that slows down the outer rim with the tire on needs to transfer that load from the disc, which is at the hub, through the spokes and to the rim, which then has the tire in contact with the ground. But when you have a rim brake bike, the braking is applied directly to the rim. So there's no transfer of braking forces from the hub to the rim because the force is applied. So when you have a rim brake bike, the front wheel is in radial spoking and the only forces that are being applied are in tension. That's why the spokes go straight from the center, go straight out to the rim. They're like in a line because the only force that is applied is in tension. Now, when you talk about a disc brake bike, the disc brake bike, what that does is when you brake the center, because you've got straight spokes, if you spoked exactly the same as a rim brake bike, the spokes are going to try and twist because they're only designed to take tension forces, not designed to take shear or rotating forces. So what you need to do is you need to design it like the back wheel because you apply force to the back wheel from your pedaling, and if a disc brake bike, also from the disc. But just say that it was a rim brake bike, you're applying a drive force to the hub via your pedaling and chain and cassette. So you need to have that cross spoking in the back wheel. Well, with a disc brake bike, that's the same thing. You're applying a braking force to the hub, so you need to have the cross spoking. Now, the bit of an issue with this is that I see, and one of the reasons why I'm not a big fan of disc brakes is because when you do that cross spoking, a lot of the designs do not cross-spoking all of the spokes, and the Campagnolia ones that you can see here are like that. Only some of the spokes are cross-spoked. So what they would do is they'd have 7 that are radial and 14 that are cross-spoked, and 7 of them are leading and 7 of them are trailing. So when you put your force on the brake, you're going to have the trailing. Hang on, let me have a look at this. Let me just think about this for a sec. The wheel is trying to turn this way. You're trying to stop the center. So it will be the leading spokes that are transferring the force from the hub to the rim. So what we have here is we have only some of the spokes that are transferring the braking force from the hub to the rim. And if you watched Pete Talk's video where he reviewed, I think they were called Drive, these wheels he reviewed, that he was talking about redundancy of spokes. And this is what he means, because when you have a wheel that only have some of the spokes transferring the load from the hub to the rim, then what happens if you break one? Because in reality, you only have 7 spokes that are transferring that load, because they are the only ones that are leading. So hang on, I just want to check that I'm getting this right. So if I'm braking the hub and the wheel wants to keep turning, yes, it's the leading spokes looking forward out from where you're riding the bike. It's the leading spokes going forward. So what that will do is they'll go into tension, but the ones that are trailing will start to detension, and the radial spokes will hold the wheel in position. So because they are just holding the wheel up, basically like a rim brake bike. They're not transferring any of the braking forces through the wheel, because you still need to keep the integrity of the wheel. Now, because you've only got 7 spokes, if one of them breaks, then you go down to 6 and the loading starts to really accelerate. And then if you break 2 spokes, it gets really bad. And a lot of people argue that, hey, look, but if you break a spoke on a disc brake wheel, you can still ride home. Well, that's not always the case, because sometimes the wheel rim moves that much that it's actually rubs on the frame. You don't always get a free lunch just because you're riding a disc brake wheel. You may not. It's the same when you break a spoke on a rim brake bike. You might be able to open your calipers far enough. You may not. It's a bit of the luck of the draw. So that's not always a guarantee on both systems. But when the problem I've got is, just say you're doing a big descent and you have a broken spoke. Now, with a rim brake bike, you're not applying any more forces through the spokes because the rim brake is only holding them in tension. You are slightly, because you still have the inertia of the bike that the wheel has to brake. So the ones that are going from the hub straight back are the ones that are actually holding or controlling your inertia of the bike trying to still move forward while you're trying to stop the rim. But with a disc brake bike, you still have that force, plus you have the braking forces that are being applied through the spokes. And because the leading spokes are not the full amount, they're the ones that are taking most of the load relating to the braking. So what actually happens is if you break a spoke and it's one of those leading spokes, it'll transfer a significant amount of load to the others. And if you break 2, it compounds significantly. And if you was banging or hammering down a hill and you had one of those leading spokes that braked, under braking, your wheel's going to start to wobble and it's going to transfer that load to those other 6 spokes instantly. And that extra stress may cause another failure in one of the other spokes, and you could actually have a complete wheel failure. And this is one of the reasons why I'm not a big fan of the lightweight disc brake wheels. Of course, when you've got 24 or more spokes on the wheel, it's not a problem, but most of the lightweight disc brake wheels are really down to 21 spokes. Most of the brands, that's what they're doing. So my issue is you don't have a lot of redundancy, and that's what Pete Talk was talking about. You don't have a lot of redundancy built into the wheel if you're relying on those spokes under braking to be able to handle if one of those leading spokes fails. So in conclusion, the reason why the wheel on the front of a disc brake bike is designed differently, it's designed pretty much the same as the back wheel, is because you're transferring forces from the hub to the rim. And with a rim brake bike, you're not transferring that load from the hub to the rim because you're braking the rim. The actual whole integrity of the rim that's on the rim brake is the thing that is transferring the load to the tire to the ground. But on the disc brake, it has to be transferred from the hub via the spokes to the rim, to the tire, to the ground. So that's why you have to have that cross-spoking on the front wheel. And the reason why, one of the main reasons I think that disc brakes really don't seem to handle the same or don't feel the same as a rim brake bike is one of these reasons, because of the way the loading's caused. Because when you're putting these forces into the wheel, you might have the bike partially leaned over because you're coming into a corner. It upsets the whole flexing of the spokes to give a nice even feel on the front wheel as you're leaning over, and the spokes actually give. And I've actually done an example, I've done a test with this. When you put your bike upside down, you put pressure to the wheel, you'll find that the twisting force is a significant amount in the wheel, and this is actually to act like a suspension. So as the wheel flexes like this, right, as you're going around the corner and goes over undulations, that gives you a passive suspension that's built into the rim. But if you've got extra loading because you're actually applying the brakes, that's going to upset that ability of the wheel to flex and keep that wheel in contact to the ground if you're going over some type of damaged road, undulations and so forth. And I've done a couple of videos on this, why I think that people have gone through undulations, they've been on their disc brake bike and then they've lost the front wheel or the back wheel because of this what I believe is related to the wheel, because it has extra forces put into it to control the bike over these undulation surfaces. Well, anyway, guys, It's a bit of a hard thing to simulate or even do. But what's your thoughts on it, on disc brake wheels and how they've designed the front wheels, how they've gone to these really low spoked wheels, which are 21 spokes, and they've got a disc on there, and they're trying to transfer all of that loading, which is quite significant with a disc brake, the whole weight of your body. You could be coming from 80, 100 kilometers an hour down to maybe 10 or 15 to go around a hairpin. What do you think about how these wheels work, how they transfer the load? And do you think that there could be some initiation of a failure, or if a disc spoke does break, how is that going to, how is that disc wheel going to handle with the redundancy in the wheel like Pete Talk was talking about? Well, anyway, guys, that's where I'm going to leave it, and I will see you next vid. Cheers.